Welcome to Uncle Jimmy's podcast. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome in to Uncle Jimmy's podcast. Today, we have a true powerhouse of transformation. Joining us is a man who spent over a decade diving deep into the hidden recess of the mind to help people break free from anxiety, trauma, chronic pain, self-sabotage, and even the grip of depression. Craig Merriwether is a certified clinical hypnotherapist and certified medical hypnosis specialist trained intensively at the prestigious Hypnotherapy Academy of America with over 500 hours of hands-on clinical education. He's the founder of Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy and Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy, where he guides clients worldwide online and in person through profound subconscious healing, including work with cancer patients for pain control, veterans overcoming PTSD, entrepreneurs, and building unbreakable confidence, athletes achieving peak performance, and everyday people reclaiming their lives from overwhelm and fear. Craig is also the creator of the best-selling Depression 180 program, praised by University of Arizona integrative medicine experts as one of the most comprehensive, user-friendly resources for turning depression around, and the Mind Mystery Blueprint. He was the host of the popular Tipping Point Radio podcast, where he interviewed icons like Marianne Williamson, Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, and Teal Swan. He's appeared on over 150 podcasts, authored contributions to the New York Times bestsellers, and brings a rare blend of evidence-based hypnosis, spiritual depth, and practical tools that get to the root causes, not just the symptoms. Get ready to have your mind expanded, your limiting beliefs challenged, and your sense of what's possible completely rewritten. Please join me in giving a massive, heartfelt welcome to the incredible Craig Merriwether. Craig, how you doing, pal?
Jimmy, I'm doing great now after that introduction. Thank you. That was quite the confidence boost. Thank you.
Hey, I tell people, right, you've probably been on podcasts and some people just, wing it and they go by it. So I do a deep dive into about everybody, right? I have a regular job, but I have passion in this, right? I have passion of bringing people on, right? And I think it's a disservice if I don't do my, justice for you in your journey, right? Because what piqued my interest with you was, I've one that suffered from anxiety and depression for quite a long time. I lost my dad 16 years ago to cancer. I was 26 at the time, and it took me almost 16 years to get through that and break through that barrier of, anxiety and depression of losing my father, right?
Yeah.
So it's tough. So we're going to get into some questions, right? Introduce yourself. Let people know.
Well, Craig Merriwether, I'm a hypnotherapist. I know there's a lot of unfortunate misconceptions and myths about hypnosis and all that. I'm not a mind controller. I do not brainwash people. I do not have any Jedi mind tricks. Hypnotherapy is this umbrella term of a lot of different techniques and tools to access your subconscious mind to create healing and to create a resolution around maybe hurt and pain, whether it's maybe the death of a parent that was unexpected or maybe very expected because it had been a while going down that journey. Or maybe it's hurt and pain, trauma experience, whether it's last month or 50 years ago. The subconscious mind, it's yours. While its main job is to keep you safe and protected, it may seem like at times that it's against you. It is not. It may seem like that, but it's trying to keep you safe and protected with the instructions it's received over the years and decades from the hurt and pain on how to try to keep you safe. Just maybe the instructions aren't very resourceful to you or very resilient to you. So just change the instructions. And that's kind of an entry point, I guess, to maybe our conversation of what I do. But it's a fascinating, I did my own healing work. Seems to be one of the aspects of being human, the anxiety and depression and anger and fear that we experience. And it's, of course, you're out hiking in Alaska, out in the backwoods there, and you turn the corner, there's a grizzly bear. You want that anxiety. You want that fear to embolden you to start running in the other direction. It's that anxiety, that fear keeps us from walking down the dark alley at midnight, even though it's a shortcut home, or peering over the edge of the Grand Canyon, or petting the nice rattlesnake in the middle of the trail. That fear and anxiety is there to keep us safe and protected. But sometimes, like the smoke alarm going off when you're making toast, it's like, okay, there's some disconnect into what is really a life-threatening situation and dangerous, and just me trying to get through the challenges of life. May it be, the challenges of illness within the family, or yourself, or work, or career, or young kids, or elderly parents, or whatever it may be, just the stress of trying to get through school, the day at work. These things may kind of start grinding the gears, sort of like driving your car in first gear at 80 miles an hour down the highway. It can do it, but it's just not great for the car. And so a lot of these tools and techniques we use in therapeutic hypnosis, we use to reset the nervous system and help maybe even heal and resolve old hurt and pain.
So you almost give people new tools, Craig.
Yeah, well, I don't even know if they're new. I mean, Sigmund Freud was a hypnotherapist.
Well, new tools to them, right?
Oh, new tools to them. Oh, yeah.
Sorry about that. That's my fault. Because like you said when you started, right? There's so many misconceptions about hypnotherapy, right? People think you sit in front of them with the old school, pocket watch, and you drift them away to sleep.
To a certain extent, while the cliched waving the pocket watch and talking in this monotone voice, to a certain extent, we're trying to be the boring teacher at school and move you into that alpha brainwave state of daydreaming. It's like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. If anybody remembers that movie, the teacher bored everybody in the class to just drift off. And if you've ever been in at a meeting at work, or you're standing in line at the grocery store, watching a boring movie and your mind flutters away, it drifts off, welcome to hypnosis. That's it. It's that easy. So that stereotypical cliche, you're getting, like waving a pen, or you're getting sleepy.
Yeah.
Really just like, I'll just drift off because it's boring. This guy's talking in a monotone. And so we just kind of use that to our advantage. And of course, it got picked up by movies and TV, and it looks ridiculous and silly. But everybody has the ability to move into this altered state of consciousness. By that, I just mean that daydreamy state of letting your mind drift away and think about the future. Maybe you got people coming over on the weekend. You got that big project due on Friday. Oh, that vacation you took a year ago. I wonder if the hotel is available this summer. We should maybe make reservations. Your mind is not in this present moment. And isn't that the whole point of meditation, like Zen meditation and transcendental meditation, TM? To keep your mind in this present moment, to this breath, to this mantra, the awareness into this present moment. The reason that can be difficult for people, because it's difficult. It's difficult to keep your mind settled in this present moment, in the beta brainwave state. So it's actually quite easy to move down to that hypnosis state of the alpha brainwave state, that daydreamy state. And so we use, there's various techniques and ways of doing it, and pocket watch and a boring voice or other ways, but it's quite a powerful way of tapping into your own healing power. And a lot of people see it as a way of losing control. Well, I don't want to go to hypnotherapy because I'll lose control and I'll give away the secrets of my bank account passwords and whatever. And it's like, you can't. It's not the way it works. It's not like in the movie. You can't hypnotize somebody. You can't hypnotize Jason Bourne to assassinate the prime minister. It's not the way it works. And unfortunately, there's also the entertainment side of this. Where it's like, well, I went to a show and people were up there dancing like Michael Jackson and singing like Elvis Presley and quacking like ducks and barking like dogs and all that stuff, having a ballet dance competition. So every single person up on that stage volunteered to be up there. They want to be up there. I don't want to be up there. That doesn't seem like fun to me. But to them, because they're extroverts, they're exhibitionists. They wanted a funny video to put on Instagram to go viral. They just wanted to be silly in front of their friends. They wanted to have a good time. They wanted to be star of the show. So they volunteered to be up there. And who's that hypnotist going to pick when they come out? Hey, welcome, everybody. We're going to have a great time tonight. Who wants to come up here on stage? Are they going to pick the introvert in the back of the room in the shadows, sinking down in their chair, trying to hide? Or are they going to pick the extrovert out there early to sit in the front row so they could stand up and say, pick me, pick me? So this isn't you can't make people do things they don't want to do. Otherwise, smoking cessation would be 100% guarantee. I could just hypnotize anybody and they'd quit smoking. I go into every Las Vegas bar and casino and you'd be healthier if you quit smoking. So, you're getting sleepy. It doesn't work that way. Otherwise, instead of going to Las Vegas to deal with smokers, I'd be going to billionaire conventions and hypnotizing billionaires to write me a big check.
Yeah, exactly.
But the reason I don't have big checks from billionaires is because they don't want to write me one. So it's unfortunately a lot of misconceptions and myths about it. But I think as people are becoming more aware of these techniques, and the research behind it, the actual research of major medical schools and universities, and showing the extraordinary power of tapping into your own healing power. It's like if you have a cut on your finger, like the index finger of your left hand, your subconscious mind knows that, starts the healing process, and it doesn't send the emergency aid to the pinky finger of your right hand. If you have a broken leg, somebody's out skiing in Alaska, they break their leg, yeah, you're going to go to the doctor, get an x-ray, get a cast, but it's your subconscious mind healing that. It's not sending all that, healing emergency aid to the arm. The leg is broken. It knows that. If you've ever had that experience of somebody pointing to your arm, hey, how'd you get that big scrape on your arm? It's like, what? Oh, I have no idea what that is. It's like the subconscious mind knew there was a problem, started fixing it, and then you became consciously aware of it after the fact. And so your subconscious mind knows what the problem is, and it knows what to do about it. It's just that sometimes with these issues around fear or anxiety or the hurt and pain we carry or the grief we may be carrying for long periods of time, it may just be that it's holding on to it for protection and safety and survival. And maybe it's holding on to it because it's got some maybe information that isn't so helpful for us anymore. Maybe those instructions on how to keep us safe came from a frightened child, maybe going through a traumatic experience, and maybe hiding and keeping your voice small and getting out of the way. Maybe that's the best thing that child could have done, keeping themselves invisible.
Yeah.
That's going to work in your 30s and 40s and 50s, but you still may be using the instructions set up unconsciously by a terrified child.
Yeah.
So change the instructions. And I don't mean to make it sound that simple and easy, but sometimes it's that simple and easy. And that's what becomes empowering, because it's not to blame the child or blame you, or even if it happened last month, it's not to blame you or say it's your fault. It shouldn't have happened. It wasn't fair. I'm not to blame the victim, but what becomes empowering is by kind of holding on to that hurt and pain, putting the files of that hurt and pain in the filing cabinet. You're the one who did that, which becomes very empowering because that means you can take them out. Even if you were a child when it happened, imagine what you can do with the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of an adult, so it becomes very healing.
Yeah. No, it's powerful. So, for everybody that's going to be listening to this on YouTube, right, for videos. So you see down there, special guest, Craig Merriwether. If you click that, that's going to bring you to Craig's website. That's going to bring you to everything. And we're going to talk about that as we go. But that's where you can find Craig, right? And we're going to get into some questions here, right, Craig? So, Craig, what first sparked your passion for hypnotherapy nearly 20 years ago, right? And how did that initial curiosity evolve into a full career helping people heal at the deepest levels?
Well, it's kind of the slow drip. You mentioned a program. I think it's 15 years old at this point, Depression 180. The reason that program came around is because I struggled with depression, with anxiety for a really long time, since my teenage years. And, I graduated high school in 1985. There's no internet. They didn't even have the antidepressants, the SSRI drugs like Prozac and things. Those didn't come out till the late 80s, along with the internet. And so really in the 80s, what you had was the whatever book you might find at the library or the bookstore, maybe find a talk therapist in the Yellow Pages, the phone book, trying to find somebody's phone number in a phone book.
You're outdating yourself now, Craig, with the phone book, right?
Yeah, really damn.
I remember those as a kid, right? I used to, you just go all the way down. I remember being a kid with the phone book and just prank calling people, right? Finding their name and you could call them,
I was there. There's a funny, this is way off topic, a complete tangent, but so many of us won't know of Dick Van Dyke, and Dick Van Dyke Show in the 60s. And he said one day he was, lived in Los Angeles making the Dick Van Dyke Show. And he was looking through the phone book, needing to find somebody he needed to call. And he's going through, and there was names and then the phone number, sometimes a street address, depending on the kind of phone book. And he's looking through it, and it said Stan Laurel. And he's like, nah, it can't be Stan Laurel of Laurel and Hardy. So he called the number, and he began a friendship with Stan Laurel of Laurel and Hardy, just because he found his phone number.
He found it in the phone book.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, those are the olden days. And so, in the 80s, I just struggle with it. I mean, how do you know any different? If nobody tells you any different, how would you know you're supposed to feel differently? And this is a age and time where you didn't talk about it. You don't talk about your depression. You don't talk about you feeling anxious. You kept that hidden. Now, as we move into the 90s, I'm getting into my 20s, my mid-20s, the personal growth movement, the self-help movement really started kind of having a second wave. and become part of it because of Tony Robbins and his book, Waking the Giant Within. And then Oprah show started becoming super huge. And other people are coming in and just talking about how you could feel better, how you could become the best version of yourself. And here are some ways and techniques and tools. And the internet was coming out, in 96, 97. Yeah, we had these 14.4 modems and it would take 12 hours to download a picture. You had chat groups and websites you can go to and discussion groups and websites coming out talking about this stuff and blog posts. And the antidepressant drugs were coming out there. So the conversation opened up. It was safe to talk about being depressed at the barbecues, at the parties, at work. I'm feeling better. I went to my doctor and I got a handful of pills. And as the internet is getting out there, the personal growth movement, personal development movement is getting huge. Discussion of anxiety, depressions getting a bit wider and more available. One of the things that people kept talking about was hypnotherapy. Like there'd be an article in a magazine or a blog post or something in a book. It'd be, here are the 5 things you can do to change your life. And one of them would always be hypnotherapy. And so that kind of slow dripped into my life, hearing it over and over. Sometimes it takes a minute for me to get a clue. So finally, maybe in the early 2000s, was like, I should try this hypnotherapy. A lot of people have been talking about it. I keep hearing it mentioned over and over again. And so I did some deep healing work using hypnotherapy. Because of deep healing work I did and all the research I'd been doing over the years with depression, that kind of led to making a book, creating a book called Depression 180, kind of through a writing contest for Hay House. It was actually for an imprint called Hierophant, but it was basically Hay House. And that was 2010 or something like that. And so I just basically quickly started writing this nonfiction book to try to be in this contest. And I did really, really, really well. And that's what led to that other book, having a chapter in that other book with Jack Canfield and Marcy Shimoff and all them. But that led to just kind of almost starting to be more in the personal development movement myself, and podcasts coming out. And I had my own podcast for a little bit and for a few years. And then kind of the reason the podcast and some of these other things were put off to the side was because I got the opportunity to train as a hypnotherapist.
Okay.
And a way to pivot later in life. And went to the school, the Hypnotherapy Academy of America, 500 hours of intensive training in hypnotherapy and neurolinguistic programming and medical hypnosis, pain management, healing control, healing acceleration. And so it's been this slow drip. I'm turning 59 here in a couple months. And so it's been this slow drip over 40 years of, just didn't like, just wasn't at the bookstore, and all of a sudden a book fell off the shelf and landed on my foot, and it said how to become a hypnotherapist today. It was just this slow drip of my own search for healing and for feeling better eventually led to, hey, I have this great opportunity. I can go do some training and kind of pivot how I'm moving through life. And so
Yeah, it's
now I'm
powerful.
talking to you.
No, so you almost, like you said, 40 years, over 40 years of doing your research and looking into it, and it leads us to today, right? With the work that you're doing. And so you emphasize, right, root level work over treating symptoms, right? Can you walk us through how the subconscious mind acts like a roadmap to the true issues and why addressing the root creates such a lasting change?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people listening probably may have experienced the frustration of spinning your wheels, maybe with talk therapy. And I'm not here to disparage talk therapy. I like talk therapy. I think it's very helpful, very healing to have that coach, that extra set of eyes. Hey, it takes like how many coaches to win the World Series? You need a batting coach, a hitting coach, a running coach, a throwing coach, a nutritionalist, a massage therapist, a physical therapist. You need a general manager to do strategy and all this stuff. Third base coach, first base coach. You need a lot of people to help you get to the championship and win. And so I think talk therapy is extraordinarily helpful in healing. But sometimes people, I think, kind of spin their wheels because they're not hitting that root issue because it's behind the veil of that unconscious part of mind. It's in the filing cabinet. And, the main job of the subconscious mind is to keep you safe and protected. Yes, it's running your immune system and running your digestive system, digesting your lunch. It's healing that cut on your finger and the broken leg and all these things that the subconscious mind can do in terms of running your body, taking a newborn baby to that of an adult. You don't have to think about that. Your subconscious mind knows how to do that. Grow your hair, grow your fingernails. It's holding on to those habits, like how do you tie your shoes, walk down the street, ride a bicycle, all these things, button a shirt. You know how to do these things. But the main job is to keep you safe and protected. But it does this by emotionalizing as kind of that fire alarm. Somebody pulls a fire alarm in the building, the sirens go off, the strobe lights go off, warning everybody if there's danger and you need to get to safety now. Well, we also have a warning system, only it's the feeling states, the anxiety, the fear, the anger, the overwhelm, warning us through our body that there's a problem. And the issue with being human, though, is the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And so sometimes things get a little manipulated, a little malleable, because just like having a nightmare in the middle of the night about a cheeseburger chasing you down the street throwing coconuts at your head is ridiculous. It's not going to happen. Yet that'll change your physiology. I'll turn on the stress response. You might wake up with a scream. There's so much cortisol in your brain now and adrenaline, sweating, looking around, looking for the danger. You can imagine what's happening in your waking world. So this subconscious mind, main job to keep you safe and protected, is highly emotionalized. Now, the conscious mind, that's that logical part of mind, the analytical part of mind. Part of mind is creating your goals, the plans to achieve those goals. Well, what neuroscience says is that conscious mind only makes up 5% of mind. Subconscious mind is 95% of mind. So when there's conflict between the logical mind and the emotional mind wins every time. That's why none of this has to make any sense. That's why sometimes analyzing logically an issue may not hit the root, because the root may be behind that veil in the subconscious mind of a hurt child, while you're trying to figure out why you keep getting mad at your, workmate, who doesn't seem to know how to run a meeting or something. And it's like, I don't know why I just keep getting mad at this person. It's like, well, maybe there's something about that person, the way they talk, the way they dress, the way they treat people, that's triggering something in one of those files. And so the root issue is not just to like, oh, I need to figure out how to be calm and comfortable and peaceful at work whenever this doofus is running a meeting. That's the symptom. The root issue is that something maybe happened, 6 months ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, and that needs to get resolved. You know what the problem is. And that's the important part of this. Just like the cut on the finger, the broken leg, the digesting the food, somebody getting a virus. We cure ourselves of cancer all the time, probably multiple times a day. That's what the killer T cells are doing, going after cancer cells and eliminating them. We cure ourselves of cancer all the time. It's just sometimes there's some issues and it gets a little out of hand. Well, you can heal the other aspects of being human, mind, body, soul. You can do more emotional type healing and mindset type healing, but it may be needing to deal with that file. Now, that doesn't mean you have to relive trauma or go through it again. It may just be literally the symbolic, metaphoric healing of taking that file and putting it into the shredder or lighting it on fire and blowing the ashes away.
Yeah.
Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, Milton Erickson, they all said the subconscious mind's main language is symbolism and metaphor and dreams and imagination. And we can talk back to the subconscious mind in symbolism and metaphor. That's some of the techniques under that umbrella of hypnotherapy, is using metaphoric style healing of setting the file on fire and blowing the ashes to the edges of the universe. So
But you got to get to that file first.
You got to get to the file, but your subconscious mind knows the file is there. Because even if somebody's dealing with some chronic anxiety, some chronic anger, I'm going to guess you're not angry and anxious all the time. There are times when maybe you don't notice it, but maybe it's just watching your favorite TV show or hanging out with your friends on the weekend or something. But there are times when I'm going to guess you're not anxious and angry. So your mind knows when to turn it on. Maybe work, it may be a certain family situation, a certain family member, a certain person in your life. But maybe, an example of this may be like when somebody was 12 years old as a kid, they're in a car that got into a head-on collision with a red pickup truck. Well, now they're in their 50s and 60s and they're driving across town to get to a friend's house for a barbecue. Great traffic. It's a beautiful day. Music's great. And they're driving. But when they arrive at the barbecue, they're like just kind of white knuckling the steering wheel and they're stressed and they're like, I don't know why I'm so upset. I'm so uptight. It's like, well, maybe because as they're driving in their peripheral vision, they saw a red pickup truck parked in a store parking lot. It's not moving. It's not coming at them. It's not an extraordinarily huge danger because it's not moving. But it was enough of an emergency. Whoa, 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 whoa. There's a red pickup truck there. You need to be careful because a while ago, we were in a really bad accident. So we want to make sure we are careful around red pickup trucks. That was instructions put in there by a child. It's not necessarily red pickup trucks. It's the idiot drivers and things. So you need to watch out for that. But those instructions got put in there by a frightened, hurt child. And they still may be running the show. They just are probably not going to work for a 50-year-old.
Yeah.
Just to watch out for red pickup trucks. That doesn't make any sense. It did when you were a child. And maybe that was very helpful for that child to move through that event. Or maybe it wasn't. It was just the
Maybe it
instructions
wasn't,
put
yeah.
in there during a traumatic event unconsciously. But not to say it was the child's fault or blame the child, of course, or to blame the victim, but that child put those instructions in there. So imagine what you can do as an adult with all your wisdom and knowledge and understanding to take that file out and to change those instructions. Child wasn't born with being afraid of red pickup trucks, but so same with being afraid of a math test at school or being afraid of flying. Nobody's born with that. You learn that maybe through a traumatic experience of being on an airplane or getting multiple Fs in school or something. You learn that. You teach yourself that. Again, maybe through a traumatic experience. So guess what? You can teach yourself something else.
Yeah. So you've worked with veterans, right? Cancer patients and people with chronic pain. How does medical hypnosis help the body heal physically when emotional or trauma-based roots are involved?
Well, a lot of this work is also based on the placebo effect. Some people, at least I maybe kind of when I was growing, maybe there's a different look at that now, but people kind of joked about the placebo. Well, it was just a placebo. It's like, no, that was the mind healing the body. And the reason a placebo has to be introduced into research, scientific research, medical research, depending on what it is. Let's say for a drug example, pain control drug, or maybe for irritable bowel syndrome or something. So they're doing medical trials, research on this new important drug. Half the people in this clinical trial, let's say there's 100 people, 50 of the people are going to get a sugar pill, a placebo. Why? Because they know the mind will heal the body. They actually have to account for that in their research. And so let's say, it's high blood pressure medication. And in the control group, in the placebo group, 30% of the people get better. They lower their blood pressure because they think they're taking medication that will cure their or help their blood pressure.
Blood pressure, yeah.
Well, they now have to, let's say, in the people getting the real medication, high blood pressure medication, 50% get better. Well, they have to subtract 30% because maybe somehow they were influencing it through the way they described the medication in the literature and the form they signed to say, I want to be a part of this, the website, the colors in the waiting room. Maybe they're influencing those people in some way to heal themselves along with the sugar pill. Well, they may also be doing that with the real medication group. So they have to account for, well, maybe we've accidentally tricked them into healing themselves. So let's take away 30%, 20% got better. That's good enough. We'll put it on the market. But they never think, well, yeah, but more people got better through healing themselves. They healed themselves. There's this great research done, or a great find, I guess, during the antidepressant research done in the 90s. This Dr. Irving Kirsch. He wrote a lot of books about the antidepressant movement and the drugs and things and how that all came about. And he did a lot of Freedom of Information Act research. Now, there's no law that says you have to publish your research. I can do research all day long. I can do research for years. I don't have to publish it. There's no law that says I have to submit it to a scientific or medical journal. I could just this research. Okay, well, now I'm just going to throw it away. That's my prerogative. But if you're getting money from the government, then you have to send it to the government. So some of this research, like Prozac and things, it was getting research from the National Institutes of Health. Well, they don't have to publish it, but they do have to give it to the National Institutes of Health, which put it in that, big Raiders of the Lost Ark warehouse. And so Dr. Irving Kirsch did a Freedom of Information Act in the mid-90s, asking for all that unpublished research, and he got it. And there was one research done by one of the companies that showed that the placebo group, now they're working with depressed people. These aren't people who have Monday morning blues because they got to go back to work. They're not sad that their team lost on Sunday. They're not sad their TV show wrapped up in a way they didn't like. These are seriously chronically depressed people for years that have a disorder. These are the people they're working with in these clinical trials for antidepressant medication. 90% of the control group, of the placebo group, got better in this one trial, as they show. Of course, they're not going to publish that.
No.
They can show that people who have had chronic depression for years can get better on their own. They're not going to want to publish that. But he found that study 90%. Now, that's not every study. This is one particular study, but shows the potential of the human being. 90% of the placebo group in an antidepressant study got better after years of chronic depression. So what hypnotherapy is there to do is to help you tap into that healing potential. The reason morphine and oxycodone and all these drugs work is because the brain's already creating a chemistry similar enough to ease that pain. The reason morphine works and oxycontin works is because there's receptors on the cells of our body that match the chemistry. Why? Because our brain's creating pretty much the same thing. You just can't patent the chemistry in a human being's brain. You can synthesize it and make something similar in a lab. Then you can patent that and you can trademark that, and then you can sell it for $70 a pill. But the reason medication works is because they're just copying what the brain can already do. So the idea is like, how can you use, well, actually, Dr. Irving Kirsch called hypnosis a non-deceptive placebo. I mean, we're
Okay.
not going to trick you into doing this by giving you a
Yeah.
sugar. You're going to do the work yourself. We already know you can do it. That's what the placebo effect's all
And he
about.
said non-deceptive
Yeah,
specifically.
non-deceptive placebo. We're not gonna- they did another extraordinary placebo effect was with Parkinson's patients. They were working, trying to find a way to help Parkinson's patients. And one of the big issues there is the lack of dopamine production. They tricked a bunch of Parkinson's patients to create dopamine in their brains with a placebo. It's like that's extraordinary. To have the brain whose inability to create dopamine is causing something as extraordinarily awful as Parkinson's to all of a sudden start creating dopamine. Now the idea is like, well, how do you continue that without, how do you move forward with that? But we have an amazing ability to heal ourselves. Now I'm not saying there's a magic wand, and there's still a lot of research and information to find out about all this stuff. But we're incredible as human
Yeah.
beings. We have the incredible ability to heal ourselves. And that's not to say if I'm in a car accident, take me to the emergency room, take me to the doctor, take me to an x-ray machine and an MRI machine. Don't take me to a hypnotherapist. But after I've been examined by the doctors and I've gotten my report of what's wrong, now I can help use my mind to help with that healing process, maybe even controlling pain.
Now, do you find that the medical community itself, how do they look at hypnosis?
It comes and goes. It depends on if people are fascinated and interested and know the research. Of course, there's a lot of, again, misconceptions and myths, but there's so much research out there. And a lot of it coming from like Harvard University Medical School did one on broken legs and found that everybody had a similar kind of broken leg. Everybody has a cast on, but half the group got hypnotherapy. And they found that the group that received hypnotherapy got their casts off in 5 weeks. The group who just had a cast on their leg got their cast off in 8 weeks. That's a 40% difference.
Yeah.
Healing accelerated by 40%. Not overnight, but it accelerated by 40%. So they also did research, half an hour hypnotherapy session before surgery lowered anxiety rates by 56%. Instead of raising them with the normal pre-surgical care that people were getting, that raised it 42%. So they're at a zero, raise it 40% or lower it 56%.
Lowered it, yeah, 56%.
Just one hypnotherapy session. Plus, the heart rate's lower, blood pressure lower. Therefore, they don't bleed as much. Surgery takes less time. Post-operative care doesn't take as much time. They're released from the hospital sooner. That's big money. Well, it's surprising that the insurance companies haven't installed hypnotherapy in all hospitals because they're going to keep the same. You're going to keep the same premiums and deductibles. But let's just say that happened with a surgery, like some sort of arthroscopic knee surgery or something. surgery takes less time, less post-op care, they get out of the hospital sooner. Maybe they save like $10,000 in and of itself, not a whole lot of money in terms of the medical field, but imagine how many people are getting surgery today in your town. It's 365 days a year times the entire United States. 10,000 a surgery? That's potentially hundreds of millions of dollars that
Yeah, oh, yeah.
so it's really going to come down to the money and how they're going to incorporate hypnotherapy education and stuff, sort of like an MRI tech. They study in, I don't know, Houston. They get their certification and license as an MRI tech in Houston, but they can move to Denver or Seattle or something and practice. So it's like, how are they going to standardize the education? But it's going to happen. And, if people are interested in this, I don't know if people know, but there's a subsection of Google and maybe in the other search engines as well, like DuckDuckGo and things. But on Google, if you go to the regular search, you type in Google Scholar, you're going to get a website, scholar.google.com, and all that searches is peer-reviewed studies that have been released in medical journals and scientific journals. Now, if you just go to regular Google and type in hypnotherapy, you're going to get a lot of blog posts and YouTube videos and comedy sketches and things like that. But if you go to Google Scholar and type in hypnotherapy and anxiety, hypnotherapy and pain control, hypnosis and, irritable bowel syndrome, you're going to get all the research on that, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of research studies. So it's out there. And
Yeah, it's definitely, it piques my interest because it's one of those where you said, if you do that if you do that before the operation, it dropped, you said 56%, right? Which is powerful, right? Because you think the insurance company wants to get you, in and out, right, as quick as you can. They want everything to go well. But if you're lowering people's blood pressure, giving them, and they're not going to bleed as much, there's so much that can be done. But it's not just even with that, right? With even surgeries, it's just, I would never think, myself as someone that has done, talk therapy, with that hypnosis would be something that would, for therapy, right? Almost ignorance on my part, right? I mean, maybe not ignorance, but maybe just, not looking outside the box of traditional.
Well, it's also, it's not, I don't think it's ignorance. It's just nobody showed you that it was a possibility.
Yeah. Or even an option.
Yeah. But again, I think as people understand more about the mind, they're looking at placebo effect. One of the other great stories about the placebo effect was the arthroscopic knee surgeon, I think in Dallas or Houston, somewhere in Texas. I don't know why Texas is on my mind today, but he wanted to find out whether like the scraping method or the flushing out method was best. And of course, to do that kind of research is expensive and you want to get it published. And to publish, you have to have a control group, even if it's surgery. And so to get published in a fancy medical journal or scientific journal, he did this study of scraping, flushing, and placebo. People got fake surgery. And so they'd actually wheel them in. They'd actually put them under, put the mask on them, and they'd go under. They'd pretend to do a surgery, scalpel, hand me this, hand me that. And it's arthroscopic, so it's like on the camera. And so they were playing somebody else's knee surgery. The man's unconscious, the woman's unconscious, but just in case they kind of wake up or in that weird coma-like state or something, they pretended to do a surgery for like 45 minutes, filled them out, they woke up. As many patients in the scraping and flushing surgeries, the placebo effect, as many patients got better. These people who were using walkers and canes and are now playing basketball with their grandchildren. There's a BBC documentary about it. And they followed these people, not with cameras and stuff, but the researchers followed them for like years and then finally told them, for the sake of the documentary, it's like, you got fake surgery.
Yeah.
You healed yourself. And the arthroscopic surgeon's like, I don't even know if what I do makes any difference.
And what's the name of the documentary? Do you remember?
No, I bet she just Googled arthroscopic knee surgery placebo effect, BBC or something. It'll come
BBC.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's extraordinary.
The power of the mind, huh?
Power of the mind.
Yeah.
And what if you could tap into that just a tiny little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, so depression, right? Depression 180 is a best-selling program lauded by experts, right?
Yeah. And again, that was from a bit ago. And so it's one of those chores that I need to put the book up on Amazon. And I'll do that at some point. And you probably still go to the website and look around and things. And I might even get an email that somebody ordered a book. But it's one of those things I need to kind of kind of reboot that whole thing. That was about 15 years ago. And then I got all caught up into training and doing these things. And so
Everything, right?
I mainly focus just on the hypnotherapy side of things and working with people. But yeah, the depression book's still out there, and some of those other programs. I might have to blow the dust off the websites, but they're still there.
So with that, right, what are the core research-backed techniques you teach that help people shift out of depression even when it feels impossible?
Well, and here's the kind of insidiousness of depression. Depression isn't like one thing, but like a broken leg. No matter how you got a broken leg, the leg is broken. It's broken in these parts, and this is how you fix it. Maybe with surgery, maybe with pins, maybe just with a cast. The problem with anxiety and depression, even anger, is it's a symptom of something. But what is it a symptom of? It may be symptom of trauma. But did the trauma happen last month? Did it happen 50 years ago? It may be the depression may be a symptom of just, the nurturing in the home. Mom was depressed. Maybe it's more of a genetic thing. And so you just grew up surrounded by people who may have been depressed. And so you just learned that's the way you're supposed to be. It may be the side effects of a medication. Some of the side effects of antidepressant medications is depression.
Depression, yeah.
It may be due to grief, the loss of a loved one. In and of itself, that's not wrong. It's the way of life, of being a human being. You may grieve, and part of that may be sadness and depression because this person you cared about is now gone. It may be due to a head injury, traumatic brain injury. 2 years after the fact is what some research has shown. That let's say somebody's a car accident or football or something, I get a concussion. That depression can show up 2 years later related to that brain injury. How would you ever know that there was a brain injury? So that's the kind of frustration in terms of, and what the book's about is there's not just like one cure-all, one size fits all. I mean, there's 8 billion of us on this planet,
yeah.
all sorts of different issues. So there's all sorts of things to do. And what the book did was go through like, okay, here's some nutritional aspects of it. Do you know that exercise has a higher rate of being an antidepressant as medication does? Exercise, it's extraordinary. Look up depression and exercise on Google Scholar. And all these studies will show, exercise has as big an influence on getting rid of depression as medication does. But, it's like, it's easier, and I get it. It's easier to take a pill than, okay, well, I got to get to my yoga class, or I got to get to my taekwondo class, or I got to jog for 45 minutes. I get it, but there's what the book was about is like in terms of nutrition. Here's a thing about like alcohol, the reasoning alcohol feels so good is because it creates all this GABA, the hormone GABA in the brain, and it absorbs and kind of dissipates all the adrenaline and cortisol, the stress hormones. But then the problem is it crashes and all the GABA kind of disappears. And so that's why you feel worse after you have drunk a lot of alcohol at times. Another aspect of like red wine, there's a lot of antioxidants in red wine. It's very good for you, good for the heart. But some people, histamine is created when they drink red wine, and they're allergic to histamine. And two of the biggest issues around histamine allergen are anxiety and insomnia. So even though he's like, oh, I'm having a glass of red wine with my fish, or if that's the right way to do it, but with my meal, but I don't know why I'm anxious and can't sleep at night. It's like, well, it may not be the alcohol. It may not be work. It may be that you're allergic to the histamines the wine's creating in your body. So there's this kind of, again, like I said, insidiousness of anxiety and depression where it's not just this one thing, like a cut on a finger, and I know I need to put some antibacterial stuff on there and a Band-Aid, and now I know how to fix that. It's like, I don't know, what's the depression about? And that's what the book goes through. It's like all these different scenarios and what can happen, including exercises and, goes into a bit about antidepressants and things. And so it's unfortunate that, I wish I could just have a 3-page pamphlet and say, here's what you can do about depression. But I think the reason we're still talking about it is because there's so many different aspects to it that are known and unknown. And why some, you could have a support group of 20 people sitting in a circle just discussing the issues, and every single one of them may have depression for a different reason. It may feel the same, it may look the same, it may act the same, but between the head injury and the side effects of a medication and the loss of a loved one and the trauma someone experienced 50 years ago, may be different.
Different, yeah. So for someone right now struggling with overwhelm or fear that's been with them for years, what's one practical self-hypnosis tool or mindset shift they can start using today?
Well, one of the aspects of this is another aspect of being human is what you practice, you get better at. And that's great if you're learning the piano or the guitar, or you're learning martial arts, you're learning dance, learning to walk as a child. But if you're practicing anxiety, you're practicing depression, practicing fear, practicing anger, you're going to get really good at it. You're literally going to wire that into your brain, into your system. One great exercise I can tell people about really quickly, because it's so easy to do, but don't let the simplicity and ease of this fool you. It's very, very powerful. Reset your nervous system and literally change the chemistry in your brain, hack your brain. It's called 3-2-1 reset. If you're in a safe place and can follow along, you can do this with us, or maybe just clock where we are in the episode and come back to this if you're driving a car. But if you're, in a safe place, you're just doing chores or hanging around the house, do this with us. If you're driving a car, watching the kids around the swimming pool, cooking with fire, maybe pass and do it later. But the three it stands for 3 slow breaths. And I know it's the most obnoxious thing in the world to tell somebody who's overwhelmed, who's frustrated, who's anxious to take a deep breath. But it's literally the best thing you could do, because when you're stressed, you have that shallow breath. And even holding your breath if you're in fear. This brain of ours takes 20% of the oxygen we breathe in. So the more oxygen you can breathe in a deep, smooth, rhythmical way, the more oxygen gets in the bottom of your lungs, the more it can fuel your body. Because if you're not getting enough oxygen to fuel your brain, it's going to start taking it from other parts of the body. It's going to turn down the oxygen levels on your digestive system, off your immune system, these things, because it needs to fuel the brain. And if your brain's not getting enough oxygen, it may start to panic. And the feeling state of panic is anxiety. So what you can do about it, literally take a deep breath in. Slow, smooth, and now it could be 5 breaths, 10 breaths, do 20 breaths. But just the name of the exercise, 3-2-1 reset. So 3 slow, gentle breaths. The other aspect of it is the vagus nerve. It's the thing when you touch a hot pot, a signal goes up your hand, up your arm, into your head. Hey, you're touching a hot pot, let it go. Goes back down, you let it go all within a millionth of a second. Well, the 10th cranial nerve is the vagus nerve. By stimulating the vagus nerve, you create vagal stimulation. A lot of people have heard about the vagus nerve, and one aspect of it that's so important is that it's a big part of the parasympathetic nervous system, the relaxation response. Sympathetic nervous system, the stress response, parasympathetic nervous system, relaxation response. And by breathing slowly, gently, and easily, because it's attached to the lungs, you can stimulate the vagus nerve, therefore activate the parasympathetic. Closing the eyes is attached to the eyes, to the ears, the muscles of your jaw. It's past your vocal cords, attaches to the heart, to lungs, and the gut. Vagus is Latin for wanderer, because it wanders all over the body. So if it's safe for you to do so when you're doing this exercise, you can close your eyes. When you're seeing that bear in the middle of Alaska, you're going to be eyes wide open, and you're going to shallow breathe because you want that quick oxygen to the big muscles. The opposite of that would be telling your brain that you're safe. Closing the eyes, breathing slowly. A lot of us keep our anxiety and stress in our jaw. So you do jaw, stretch out your jaw yoga. It looks silly. You don't have to do this in a meeting or in the middle of dinner, but, find a private place and do that. You can close your eyes. Even with your head straight, eyes closed, look up like you're looking up at the ceiling. Again, stimulating the vagus nerve, taking a deep breath in. So that's three slow, gentle breaths. And then we're going to grab our shoulder. We're going to create bilateral stimulation, because when somebody's in fear and anxiety, this alarm system is going to pull in all the blood supply, not all of it, but the blood supply, the oxygen, the nutrients, the fuel, and light up this fear, this anxiety. Well, to undo that, you can move your body. And here's my little stress squeezy ball, but racquetball, tennis ball, pen, water bottle, something. Pass it back and forth in your hands, or drum on your knees. Remember somebody in school or that meeting at work, and they're drumming on their knees. They're nervous. They're calming themselves down, walking, riding a bicycle. One aspect of that is because you're creating bilateral stimulation and you're operating these different parts of the brain, and it pulls away that energy to light up these other parts. So you're forcing your brain to work. We're going to grab our shoulders. This, of course, is a hug. The human being needs something like 5 to 6 hugs a day. You need 5 or 6 hugs a day. So give it to yourself. Again, you don't have to do this in the middle of a meeting. You don't have to do this in the middle of a classroom or in the middle of the airport. Find a private place and grab your shoulders, eyes closed, deep breath in. And this is signaling. Remember the hot pot? This is signaling. This is sending a signal up to your brain. This is nurturing, loving, healing touch. It's now going to create that GABA, dissipate all that adrenaline, cortisol, and it's now going to create oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine, the feel-good chemistry. You're literally hacking your brain and creating feel-good chemistry, changing chemistry in your brain just through this hug and this deep breathing. Then we're going to supersize that and think of somebody you want to give a hug to. The mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. That's why a nightmare feels so scary, even though it can be really ridiculous. So think of somebody you want to give a hug to, a good friend, family member. You have a dog, you have a cat. You had a dog or a cat or a bunny rabbit or a guinea pig when you were a kid. If somebody's no longer with us, you're a parent or your grandmother, your grandfather. Maybe there's somebody in the world you've never met that inspires you, you admire, an author, a teacher, a musician, an actor. Maybe somebody from history, Mother Teresa, Joan of Arc, Mahatma Gandhi, somebody. Pretend you're hugging them, and it'll literally change the chemistry in your brain and reset your nervous system in 5 minutes. Extraordinary. Now, imagine practicing that. And then as you practice resetting your nervous system, it's going to get faster and quicker to the point where you're going to reset yourself, and what you practice, you get better at. Now, there may be other aspects of healing that need to happen. Maybe there's some resolution to some hurt or pain, some healing that needs to happen with something that happened, again, whether it was 6 months ago or 60 years ago. But as you heal that pain, that's why hypnotherapy, we're only looking at like 3, 4, 5 sessions. You can do more if you like, but generally what I tell people is we're going to do 3 or 4 sessions because you know what the problem is.
Yeah.
You know what the answer is. And then as you practice these techniques of resetting the nervous system, rebooting the nervous system, and hacking your brain to change the chemistry, start rewiring your brain, literally forming new neural pathways. And yeah, it doesn't take a long time. I'm not saying everything's a one and done and I have a magic wand and I can do Jedi mind tricks and things like that. But you know what to do to heal this. And sometimes just giving yourself that permission to let go of that file or let go of that heaviness. And this isn't talk therapy. That's, again, very important, very useful, very healing. But we're not going to use the logical mind to analyze the situation. You know what the problem is, and therefore you know what to do about it. And so we're going to use the power of that subconscious mind that's holding on to this situation, again, maybe to protect you, maybe to keep you safe. But we're going to use your own powerful subconscious mind to create healing around this. And that's why this doesn't, and generally why I tell people 3, 4, 5 sessions is because I want them to understand it's not going to be 80, 90 sessions over the next 2 years. And I mean, again, I don't want to disparage talk therapy. I think it's very helpful, very useful. But sometimes you feel yourself spinning your wheels, and it's like 2 years. I'm like, I don't know. I still feel awful. I still hurt.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there's some other aspects to this, and that can be.
That's
healed
how I
and-
feel sometimes with talk therapy. It's like spinning your wheels oftentimes. You
Yeah.
know, it can get very frustrating. So spiritual, right? Spiritual hypnotherapy versus traditional hypnosis. What's the difference in your approach? And when might someone benefit from the more spiritual or symbolic side of it?
Well, the more spiritual side, of course, somebody will want to, one would assume spirituality would be a very important part of their life. And I'm not necessarily talking about a religious aspect, but that very well could be the case. But in terms of the spiritual aspects, the fascinating part of this work, these tools and these techniques, yes, they can reach the subconscious mind. But there's also aspects of it that can reach what some people call the super conscious level or mind, that higher self. Now, some people take great pains and great expense to travel to go do ayahuasca ceremonies. Now, I'm not saying I can create an ayahuasca ceremony with hypnotherapy, but the reasoning behind that is to have these deeper spiritual experiences. Now, what if you have the power to already access that anyway? Again, it's not so much that the ayahuasca is doing it, it's that the ayahuasca is turning on certain switches and buttons and knobs to help you access that. So just like pain control, just like morphine and oxycodone help because the brain can already do it. Ayahuasca and some of these other experiences people have on a spiritual level, what if you could already do it? And so, and that's a whole another 8-hour conversation, because my interest lies in very maybe esoteric kind of things like past life regression and the science and spirituality behind those kind of things, which I know is kind of unique and different in the more Western world. Again, this has been a slow drip. It's not like I just kind of fell backwards into a book stack of past life regression, but it's kind of been a slow drip over the last 30, 40 years of my own spiritual work. One of the reasons I really didn't hit on at the beginning was the reason hypnotherapy hit so hard for me is because the two aspects of my life that were super big and super important, but super big in my life were depression, anxiety, and spirituality. I grew up very religious in the Episcopal Church and a Baptist school, which are two very head-butting kind of theologies. even though they're both Christian. And so spirituality was almost 24 hours, 7 days a week, because I'd go to school 5 days a week, Bible class and chapel with speakers and things like this. And all my friends lived near the church I was at. The school was like 40 minutes away. I had to, carpool to and take the bus to. But the church I went to was just up the street. So all my friends in the neighborhood went to the church. So we were always doing church, youth group stuff, weekends and stuff. So everything was church related. And so that was a very big part of my life from 0 to 18, 19 years old. And so I related a lot of the joy and happiness I experienced to more spiritual things. And so that was a big part of my finding myself. It was not only healing of the depression and the anxiety, but also more spiritual stuff. And lo and behold, hypnotherapy can, help. It has the tools and techniques to help with both those aspects of my life that were so big in my life. I don't say depression and anxiety were important, but were big issues in my life.
Yeah.
And so it's different, and yet it's still you. You're just like somebody needing confidence is different than somebody needing pain management is different than somebody needing to release and let go of some anxiety and fear. These are different tools and techniques, even though under the umbrella of hypnotherapy, you can help them with all those things. And going more into the deeper end of the swimming pool, still the same swimming pool, just maybe we're going to go a little bit deeper.
So-
and people that are just, they may either have read a book by Brian Weiss. People know Brian Weiss, Many Lies, Many Masters, or Dolores Cannon, or Michael Newton. They come to this work and they say, oh, that's fascinating. That's aligning with where I am right now in my spiritual journey. And hypnotherapy is a big part of all those people, Brian Weiss, Dolores Cannon, Michael Newton. And so that's how they end up finding the more spiritual side of hypnotherapy.
Side of it, yeah. So confidence, right? Confidence and peak performance are huge areas you help with. How do you help entrepreneurs and athletes move from doubt and blocks to unstoppable self-belief?
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things of, in and of itself, there can be a generalized, well, here's the deal with blocks to your confidence, blocks to moving forward. But it's really a personal issue in terms of the specifics around it. But it's really, there's two aspects to that, because just because you you resolve and heal maybe any fear about moving forward or increasing your income or whatever the issues may be, doesn't mean you all of a sudden have confidence in that area. But confidence can be practiced. Certainly, people aren't born with the confidence to walk down the street or to ride a bicycle or whatever this thing is. You learned it, practiced it, saw that you could do it, and now you have the confidence you can tie your shoes. There was a time when you couldn't tie your shoes, but tying your shoes now, saying, well, that's so silly that I have confidence tying your shoes. And yet you do have confidence that you can do it. That's that you can lock the front door, that you can ring the doorbell. Yes, these are silly things. You can boil water to make pasta. These are silly things, but you can do them, and therefore there's confidence there. And some of the aspects of this work is linking that confidence you have to tying your shoes and riding a bicycle to giving that speech at the big conference or running the meeting on Friday. And if you can feel that confidence of tying your shoes or riding the bicycle or walking down the street, wherever you feel, maybe in your heart, maybe in your head, maybe in the back of your neck, your throat, your arms, or wherever you may feel it, you can increase it. Again, a lot of this is symbolic and metaphoric, but that's the language of the subconscious mind. And so may need to be healing around the blocks to moving forward. Maybe there's some fear of the unknown, or that this is, whatever the situation is. But the other aspect of that, okay, now that you've resolved those issues, how do you build confidence around giving a speech? And of course, one of those is practicing. Of course, you got to practice. But in terms of the fear of, well, people may laugh and okay, well, that's an imaginary issue. And you can get a trainer, like a coach to help you with your presentation and all that stuff. But in terms of those more imagined, they're going to throw rotten tomatoes at me and chase me off the stage with pitchforks and fire. Okay, those can be also handled with hypnotherapy.
So I got 3 more questions for you, right? Healing trauma without reliving it, right? It's a powerful promise. How does your method allow people to process and release old wounds safely and gently?
Well, a lot of this work is the work of like neuro-linguistic programming. There's another 8-hour conversation, but it's about disassociating from the trauma. And one way of doing that may, again, be a very metaphoric way of doing this healing work, which is, allowing the person to relax. Maybe they're lying maybe we're doing a Zoom session and they're lying back in a recliner. They're on the couch in their own home. We're doing this over Zoom. And I want you to close your eyes and I want you to pretend you're in a movie theater and you're sitting in the best seat in the best row. And as you're sitting in the seat, you see up on the movie screen is the movie of that old traumatic event you were experiencing in the past. And now as you sense that, and I want you to pretend now that you know the movie is there, before the movie starts, I want you to put an image of a calm, comfortable place before that situation happened. And then you're going to run the movie and you're going to go to a calm, comfortable place after it happened, like maybe a party or a day at the park or hanging out with friends or just lying, reading a good book or something, whatever it may be. So you're kind of bookending it with these two wonderful events. And now that you're sitting in a movie theater, I actually want you to pretend that you move out of yourself and you move back into projection booth and you're looking through that little square hole in the wall. So you're looking at yourself, looking at the movie theater, at the movie screen. And as you start playing that movie, I actually want you to make that movie black and white. I want you to make it smaller. I want you to make it out of focus. And then when you get to the end, I want you to rewind it. I want you to play it again, only it's now smaller. So it's like a black edging around it or a white edging and it's scratched up. And now I want you to rewind it. And as you watch yourself in the projection booth, looking through that window at yourself, watching the movie, you keep disassociating yourself from like 3 times because you're looking through a window at yourself, which is now looking at a movie screen, but not in it. And you're changing it at the same time. It's black and white. It's grayer. It's out of focus. It's smaller. I want you to make the image a circle instead of rectangle. I want you to push that movie screen 50 yards away from you. So it's way out there and you kind of have to squint to even see that little pinhole you've changed it. You've created resolution in ways around it that maybe you hadn't before. And so that's just a quick little example of one of maybe the more famous techniques you can use for trauma. There's something about running the movie, changing it like, oh, it's black and white or it's scratched up, it's fuzzy, it's out of focus, and then rewinding it. Because we all know what a movie looks like when you rewind it, running backwards and talking. But the mind doesn't know how to run emotions backwards. And so there starts to be this disconnect between the image, the sound, and the emotions. And you start unplugging all those cords. And after maybe a half an hour's worth of work, it's like, yeah, this doesn't bother me anymore.
So last question, right? For anyone listening who's feeling stuck right now, what's one message you'd want them to take away about their ability to change and reclaim their life?
You're an extraordinary person because you're a human being here on earth and you have extraordinary ability to heal. Now, there may be some blocks to that and that can be frustrating, but you know what the problem is. And what's extraordinary is you know what to do about it. You just may need to give yourself permission. And it may be through some of these techniques or tools that we have in hypnotherapy. But in terms of this work, you can find healing. Now, that doesn't make your life rainbows and unicorns 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the next 80 years, but allows you to come to the challenges of life in a more resilient and resourceful way. Now, Jimmy, I wouldn't ever tell you it's like, you need to heal your grief. You need to feel grief. That's a human process that we need to go through. These rites of passage in life of people close to us, our loved ones passing, maybe unexpectedly, maybe very expectedly. But I would never come to you and say, well, you've grieved for 3 weeks. What's wrong with you? No, you grieve in the way you need to grieve for the amount of time you need to grieve. Now, if you feel stuck in that grief, like I just can't move forward, I can't, there may be some need to resolve some issues there. But again, it doesn't all of a sudden make life, rainbows and unicorns, but it allows you to come to those issues of life in a more resilient and resourceful way. And so you have the ability to heal, empower. If you felt frustrated doing some other things, whether it's EDMR or breath work or talk therapy, these are great therapies, helped millions upon millions of people. But if there's something about it that's not getting to that core issue that you're discussing, then maybe hypnotherapy might be it. And it's your subconscious mind. You're in control. And you're allowed to heal when you're ready to do it.
Yeah. So Craig, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Oh, Jimmy, thank you. Yeah, it was a great conversation. Appreciate all your questions.
Thank you for showing up with such authenticity, right? Depth and compassion. You've dedicated your life to helping people unlock doors they didn't even know were locked. And today you've given our listeners not just information, but real hope and practical pathways to transformation. Your work reminds us that healing isn't about fighting harder. It's about going deeper, trusting the mind's wisdom, and stepping into the freedom that's already within us. Keep shining that light, keep guiding people home to themselves, and know that every life you touch ripples out in ways we'll never fully see. You're making the world better, one subconscious shift at a time. Thank you, Craig.
Thank
We're
you, Jimmy.
grateful
Really
for you, and I
appreciate it.
can't wait to see where your journey takes you next. Until we speak again, keep changing minds and changing lives, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you, Jimmy.